I am here because of Margie Ensign. I have worked with her before. I believe in her, and I am very impressed with the mission of AUBG and its growing relevance to this country and to this region. So we all want to work together. I felt very honored by this offer to spend time with you. Lots of people are impressed with celebrities and artists and politicians. They all have their place. I'm impressed with people like you, difference makers, people who walk into hard places, people who see a dearth of opportunity, people who see something that isn't being done and say, let's get it done. Let's commit ourselves to making a difference. You have much greater effect than you realize. You are like a pebble in a pond. Whatever you start today, whatever action you create today reverberates outward over decades and sometimes over centuries. If you study history, you learn to admire the pioneers, the people that started something, started institutions, started causes, because it is the most difficult period. It's the most discouraging period. Not everything is here and ready and available to you, even understanding, even awareness. It's not here. You have to build it all. So it's wonderful what you've committed yourself to. As I prepared for the day, I thought, how can I be most helpful to you? Having spoken to a number of groups like you, I understand what happens, and there is this tendency to say, this person knows about finding resources, finding money, and there's a tendency then to zero in on how. How would we do this, Jim? How would we identify potential sources of support? How would we interact with them? How would we intersect their paths? How would we start conversations? And the most dread-inspiring question of all, when do we ask them for money? And are there magical words that you can use that cause otherwise reluctant people to go, of course. Well, I'll address those issues, but let me start in a different place, because my thesis, if you will, today is that in every culture, in every time, runs a philanthropic river. Sometimes it gets buried, sometimes it gets suppressed, sometimes it gets discouraged, and what we try to do is to find it, not manipulate it, not use it, but what in that culture is truly philanthropic? What does that culture hope for itself? And then try to lift it up, to nourish it, to enrich it. So we don't raise money until, and must always commit ourselves to creating the conditions that will cause people to be philanthropic. It doesn't happen automatically. Even in places like the United States and Canada, where it is more pronounced and more prolific, we have to work on nourishing it, on bringing it forward, on reminding people. And we sometimes have to discourage organizations from being too transactional. Oh, somebody will give money? I'll send out an appeal. I call it squeezing the pastry tube. Can we get more out of that? But who's feeding the tube? Who's making and causing people to feel more philanthropic? So what we need to commit ourselves on as a global enterprise is reminding ourselves that philanthropy is a part of the human condition. I believe it's the best part of the human condition. It manifests itself in different ways, in different times, and in different personalities. Giving money is just a part of it. But when we understand the greater river and when we tap into it in a more meaningful way, then we start to see its most beautiful expression. If we become too transactional, too urgent, too desperate, too something ambitious, we don't always see the full depth of it and therefore capture the full energy of it, if that makes sense. So I want to start in a very different place and give you a sense of how I think and what I have learned over the years. So that's what I want to share with you about identifying philanthropy and nurturing philanthropy so that it ultimately flowers. In an American phrase, I don't know if you use it, in time that people give, talent, and treasure. But those go together. Those go together, and that's what we'll share with you. So let me take you to a very different place a few years back when I was working for a major university, and I was developing support in London. We had alumni there, and so I was going there to reconnect, to listen to them, to ask what did we have in common, how might we work together, how might the university support them, and then we hoped at some point, if we were nurturing of them, that we could work together toward common ends. So I was listening to people and building bridges and trying to form community. You see Margie and Susan doing much of this now, is forming community from among alumni. Pieces of it we're trying to pull together. So I discovered that one of our prominent alums who we did not know was the Saudi ambassador to the UK, was a Georgetown alum. Well, you know my business. One has to assume that a Saudi ambassador is not poor, that a Saudi ambassador has access to resources, and that part of my job was to see if a coalition could be built. So I requested an appointment with the Saudi ambassador. It was not easy. I had to wait months. They did a security briefing on me. I had to submit to an extensive background profile. They literally checked me out. I had people calling that they were getting calls from an investigative agency. So they were checking you out, very deep, very significant security. And after months of waiting, I'm told, yes, you can have an audience. Listen to the language. You may have an audience with the ambassador for 8 minutes. And you must come to 3 preparatory sessions to prepare so that we make sure you know how to do this. All right. Wasn't a kid at the time. But so I go to various briefing sessions, and they're a little bit like scolding. You know, it's protocol, but it's thou shalt not do these things, that thing, and you must behave. So I'm listening. Yes, 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 yes. I will be respectful of the culture. I'll be respectful of the ambassador. So finally the day arrives, and I have to arrive something like 45 minutes early, right? Make sure I'm there. So finally this moment arrives, right? And I have this aide-de-camp of the ambassador who comes in who's very nervous, notwithstanding all the checking out they've done, all the preparation I've done, he's still nervous. I may do something wrong. And so he prepares me again, tells me what I must do and not do. And then he starts to lead me through a series of ante-rooms. I think I'm going to walk into the ambassador's room, but it's another ante-room. This goes on. And finally, these doors swing open, and it's the largest office I have ever seen in my life. And the ambassador is at the far end of this long office. And of course, he is an Arab. He's wearing a burnous. He's mustachioed. And he's sitting at the far end, and he's kind of looking through thick eyebrows, kind of a scowl. So this is not, you know, the sort of typical greeting that one would hope for, like Nancy provided for. But you know, it is what it is. And this nervous aide-de-camp is then marching me towards. So I'm looking at this ambassador. And luckily, I was experienced enough to not take in all the optics, which were designed to awe, to impose, to demonstrate grandeur. I understand this is a part of what happens in international politics. I was taking all this, but I'm looking for the human being that I'm about to meet. So as I walk to his desk, he stays behind his desk. So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. And I look at him, he's still got this, you know, furrowed brow, looking through his thick eyebrows at me as if to wonder who I am. So you go on autopilot and you go, how do I reach this human being? I didn't have a script, and very often I don't have a script because I'm trying to intuit who I'm meeting and what's the bond. So I said to him, Mr. Ambassador, everyone at Georgetown is so proud of what you've accomplished in your career. We want to learn more about your journey, how you arrived at this point. We'd like to learn where you are going, and we'd like to see if we, Georgetown, could work with you on that journey toward some common purpose. And this stern-looking Arab, I hold my hand and he doesn't take it at first. I was not supposed to do that. He takes, not only does he take my hand, but he walks me around this long desk, holding my hand, walks up to me and throws his arms around me. He's a little shorter than me, right? And all of a sudden, this, you know, imposing, intimidating man is looking up at me, and tears are coming in his eyes. And the aide-de-camp has no idea what on earth just happened. This was not the script. This was not what he was supposed to do. Right? And my 8 minutes turned into 45 minutes. And the ambassador says to me, he remembers a teacher at Georgetown, a former president. And he's telling me the influence. I was lonely. I didn't fit in. Very human story. Right? This imposing man, this very human story. I was lonely. And Father Healy befriended me. He spent time with me. And he's so grateful, right? And so I'm just listening and understanding what this connection is, how we can work together. And it's one of these wonderful moments in philanthropy that so many people in fundraising miss. Do you hear the distinction? Because they get caught up in, oh, I need to make my presentation. I need to get my points in. Forget your points. When we are working and building community, we are trying to meet each person where he or she is and find what we have in common. The great organizing skill is called listening, and it's deep empathetic listening that ultimately builds bonds and builds community. So the ambassador spent lavish time with me, and then on the way out, steps up and says, you must come to Saudi Arabia under my protection. That means as my personal guest. My aide-de-camp, who's now very resentful that I've somehow, on the way out, goes, that doesn't happen every day, you know. Well, why do I share that story with you? You see, you have to look across impressions. You have to look across cultures. And you must believe, as I have learned, that there is a common human bond. There is something that unites us that gets separated by culture, that's separated by power, that gets separated by wealth and fame. And scared people get behind masks and behave in funny ways. So it isn't fundraising, but it's philanthropy that uses our benevolence to bring out the benevolence in others. Does that make sense? That is so it is often our journey that leads us to be effective agents of philanthropy. One of my favorite quotes is from an Irish gentleman. I am Irish, so you'll have to forgive me. John O'Donoghue, who said, when we deaden our depths, when we deaden them, we fail to resonate with others, those we meet, and the work we do. It's so easy to deaden our depths in modern society, to work hard, to sleep too little, to try too hard, to worry about money, right, all those things we must do, we have to do, bustle about, and sort of get into a hyper state where we're trying to accomplish a lot, and then meet people in this kind of urgent way, hoping they will do something for us, and to miss this river, to not see deeper. Do you know the expression that still waters run deep? So very often we fundraise at the still water level and don't get down to the deeper level. So what I've learned to do is this deep listening and throw away assumptions, looking for this deepness in people so that we can resonate with them and form a lasting bond. Not secure a gift, but build a purposeful partnership. So much of the United States, the big mistake has been made about getting gifts, and we've lost 1/3 of giving households in 30 years. 1/3 of people, households who once gave for some philanthropic purpose are no longer giving. We turned it into a big ATM, a big transactional machine. We focused on technique, how to get money, how to squeeze money, how to get our goals, Well, we have thermometers where we show how much money people gave, right? And people started disconnecting. And I'm going to show you research now that says this is exactly what is happening. To the extent there is a revolution, and it is, it's people going, no, I'm looking for something deeper. I'm not so interested in those options. And if institutions can't provide those for me, I'm going to go create something on my own or look for something on my own. So we now see people stepping outside of institutions to engage in philanthropic work that they're creating. The trouble is, what? This is then at the expense of institutions. So with this knowledge, you can start in a better place and make sure that you work toward the future. Years of research, decades of research, experience interacting with donors around the world in different cultures. What I've concluded through all this research is that there are 3 powerful dominant donor desires, three powerful underlying currents. To belong. And not only belong, but to belong to something greater than ourselves. And to belong with what I call kindred spirits. People who care about what I care about. People who give meaning to my life. To believe, this would be certainly true in faith, but this is true in so many other things. It's true in higher education, where people want to believe in something greater, in a higher form of excellence, in a higher form of achievement, in a higher level of principle. And so they'll be drawn to institutions because it allows them to believe in something that is holding us to a higher ethical, educational, some sort of standard, right? Let's be better. This is a powerful impulse. And then finally, to better, to make a difference. It's what you do. Let's not just talk about giving money into organizations. Now let's talk about exactly how, if I give to you, we better this city, this region, this area. So what's happened in philanthropy over time, and two scholars have called this global change a tectonic shift in philanthropy. Tectonic. Big. And it's true. So what's happening is a reemergence of people to make a difference, is a reemergence of people saying, I'm frustrated with institutions, they're not listening, they're not responding, they've become about institutions, not the will of the people, so they're acting outside of them. And the institutions that are managing to do well, if not prosper, are not acting like institutions, but more responsive causes or organisms. They're listening, they're adapting, they're responding. So we're starting to see this dividing line, a tectonic shift. And what people are doing are asserting themselves into this equation. And in some cases it's terrifying to some organizations. And yes, some people assert themselves in somewhat awkward ways and maybe be a little inappropriate or maybe try to throw their weight around. Some wealthy people may go too far. But if we just obsess about them, we'll miss something else, which is the average person looking at institutions and thinking about how they participate is really saying, do I have a voice and do I have choice, or are they going to tell me what to do? Is this a democratic organization? Or no matter what they call themselves, are they going to say, no, we figured it out, and here's what you need to do. You give, we decide. It won't work. It won't work. Yes, you have expertise, but you have to bring people in to conversation and help them understand. And you have to understand that everyone who comes at you in a different place, within a different agenda, a different point of view, and is looking for some combination of this. What happens when we start the conversation with need, with desperation, with what isn't happening, with our goals, right? Our objectives? Is if they already know us, they will ascribe to those. If they don't, they'll stay away. So, what I see so often in people, NGOs and what we call nonprofits and wonderful people, very dedicated, is that they will start at this notion of the proposal or the pre-proposal. Let's engage, share with them what we're doing, and hope that the conversation flows from there. And when people who are inexperienced in securing resources and asking for money are inexperienced and somewhat unconfident, what do? Is they put themselves unintentionally in a kind of a lower position. Oh, we're doing really good work. Don't you want to help us? It's a plea. Isn't this important? You see where I'm getting? And this is not how strong bonds are formed. You are doing such important work. I would argue, the most important aspect, the most important part of your character is to share what you see. Why did you become dedicated to this work? What are you trying to achieve? And remember, when you engage with a person of wealth, what your primary objective is to do is to provide what money can't buy. They can buy lots of things. Power, prestige, access, influence, and not be happy, not be fulfilled. like our Saudi ambassador, no shortage of wealth, no shortage of opulence, and yet this yearning, this nostalgic memory, and a desire to reconnect to something that was so meaningful to him in his life. You see, so we miss where to form the bond. So I wanted to say, when you're talking to people about why you want them to join your community, what benefits are you providing them that money can't buy? Here are some. You're going to find great joy in just working in something larger than yourself, right? You're going to see remarkably dedicated people giving of themselves in service to others. It kind of reminds us how kind of small we got sometimes, how we got a little too of ourselves when we see dedicated people really trying to make a difference. You will collaborate with kindred spirits. We'll put our collective talents to higher purpose. Talent. People want to give talent. It's often how they identify themselves. Our research shows when people are engaged by NGOs, nonprofits, those kinds of organizations, their principal complaint is they use a lot of my time and too little of my talent. See, I want to give what I know is the best about me, right? So think about the benefits that you offer current and prospective donors and make sure you share those benefits. Here's what we do together, and this is of immense value, and this is of immense joy. Here are some other things that money can't buy that can only be provided through the work that you do and organizations like you do. These things. Sharing of values. As people get older and think about where to transfer their wealth, one of the primary considerations is not the neediest, but where will values live on? And one of the values that we're most concerned about in both our countries is democracy itself. Right? So who's addressing this issue? Please, Mike.
I just want people to know we're sharing those slides.
Yes.
Everybody's writing down.
Oh, sorry, thank you. These are available to you, right? So you see what we're doing is confidently advertising, not asking for money, not pleading, not trying to make a case for support, but to say, is this not the kind of community you would like to join? Are not these the things that you would like to be a part of? And wouldn't this somehow address something that may be missing in your life? Now, you don't always say that directly, but that's what I look for anytime I'm working with any prospective giver, is to say, how can we help fill what's missing in their lives? Margie and Susan organized a dinner of entrepreneurs last night in Sofia. Always fascinating, because I can see what's missing in some of their lives. They got a lot of money, and yet we have one fellow, I won't name him, he wants to be there, but he doesn't want to be there. He wants to put his toe in the water, but he doesn't want to be too participative. He's something he's looking for. So we're trying, listen. Not in a manipulative way. We want to be better by his presence, and we think we can give him more. If he will come aboard and start to trust and work with us, we'll learn from each other. I want you to know that even at this advanced age that I continue to listen to young people and listen to what their wisdom is about what we mean by nonprofit work and what we mean by NGO work. And one of the most prescient 21-year-olds I know of said, the purpose of this work is to improve ourselves as we improve community. You see, people just don't want to give or help you do things. They actually want to make themselves better. They want to grow. They want to come away as a deeper, wiser something person. By the way, that 21-year-old was a famous American named Benjamin Franklin, and it was about 1738. And he actually predicted this philanthropic growth. So you are the Benjamin Franklins of Bulgaria. You are organizing. You are planting seeds. So remember, give people the opportunity, not just give time, talent, and treasure, improve themselves, right? So this is what's often missing in the narrative of work in our field. It's, oh, what do I put out on Thursday to cause people to give next week? What is the event I can do where I can wow, I call it wowing people into philanthropic submission. Give them such a talk, they go, oh, I want to give. Oh, now I want to give. But do you ever wow people, or do you say something that resonates and they go, oh, that's me, that's important, right? And so it isn't what we say, it's what we listen. One of the things I pioneered in is what I call structured listening or forensic listening, training people to ask certain questions so that we can discover people's inner motivation. And then out of that inner motivation, oh, if you care about X, did you know we're doing Y? You see, we never raise funds, we matchmake. We match our capabilities and competencies to their convictions. We put the two together. If we just fundraise, we hit or miss. We hit or miss. So we make that difference. So we want to listen, find out what people care about, what's missing in their lives, what they hope to achieve, and then say, can we work together? Not chase gifts, but to build philanthropic partnerships. Another story. A woman in the United States became quite famous in one big city because she gave to libraries. She gave to 2 libraries, and the next person building a library said, oh, there's somebody who funds libraries. So everybody who wanted a library went to her and asked to fund a library. She funded every one. Until Drexel University, a colleague of mine, is sitting down at an event where they're recognizing her for the gift, and he says to her, for the first time of anybody who's interacted with her, why libraries? First time. She's given to 6 or 7 libraries, millions of dollars. Why libraries? She says, in my first marriage, I was in a violent, abusive relationship. And the library was the sanctuary. I could take my children in there and stay for hours. It was safe, it was nurturing. They loved it there. There was so much for them to do. The librarians were so accommodating to us. It was critical to the formation of our family, to my survival, and ultimately getting myself to a better place. And he says, do you know about our public policy center dealing with spousal abuse? No, she says. And 18 months later, gives her largest gift ever. We hear what we want. The most important question, whether somebody gives you the first gift or anywhere, is, why did you give that? What were you hoping for? What was in your life that made you think that was important? So this is what I pioneered in, is this biographical, or encouraging people to be autobiographical and say, tell me the story, listening for the threads, and then saying, I think I see a theme. Does this make sense? Yeah. What about this? Is this a way we can work together? You see how different that is from that traditional transactional fundraising? So the great compliment of my career, people, you put together resumes and you put together biographies, people will point to my having been a party to the raising of billions of dollars, probably $4 billion. But the greatest compliment in my career, what I take the most satisfaction in, is being asked multiple times to give the eulogies at donors' funerals. People who gave everything to the institutions I represented and told the surviving spouse, will you ask him to speak for me? I think he understands me. And particularly with men who aren't always given to a lot of introspection, me asking a lot of questions, men, older men, I was much younger at the time, would say, Jim, I didn't even think about that until you asked me. I didn't even realize that about myself until you asked me. So we're in a dialogue of mutual self-discovery. Out of mutual self-discovery, we form deeper human bonds. Out of deeper human bonds, we collectively commit. The difference between transactional fundraising and something that is much deeper. All right? So here's how we deaden our depths, and I understand, I get people irritated at me. I understand you need these things, but they want to start the conversation here. We need unrestricted income. How inspiring. What you need right now is why I was put on this planet. See where I'm going? I'm teasing you out of good, right? Need to balance this year's budget. There's a lot of that in this world. Oh, will you give toward the year end because we're 20,000 short? Do that once. Margie, forgive me, but strategic pillars, everybody's got them. Everybody's got them. Strategic pillars, they're important. They're an important organizing tool. That's not what I'm spoofing. But I'm saying, you think of those in the Colosseum. We've got to turn strategic pillars into living organisms, in which people can see themselves and pour life into, right? And then we do all these kinds of things in the name of fundraising. Margie is atypical, but very atypical of many college presidents. You know, they'll speak for a full hour on everything that's important about the institution. People go, oh, wonderful, and leave. But no one's inspired to help because they didn't see any need for help. You just told them everything was wonderful. So one of the things I coach presidents, and I would put forward to you as consideration, when you're sharing with people, you do want to share the good you're doing. That gives you credibility. Here's what we've done already. Imagine what we could do. But when we have coached presidents and sometimes deans in their own way, in their own words, to speak for a few minutes and stop and say, but you know what keeps me awake at night? And then tell a story of what we could be doing that we're not. People we could be helping, but we're not. People we started to help but lost. Something we started and it stopped. When we see that, presidents will call me up after and say, Jim, at work, they came up afterwards and said, how can I help? You see, trying to wow people into philanthropic submission versus bringing them in to the problem solving. Being a kind of regal president versus being a human being and causing people to feel more accessible. You can impress or you can engage. You can impress or you can engage. And sometimes it is our own vulnerabilities that will help people see who we are. This is my favorite definition of leadership. When I think about world leaders, leaders in histories, and people I know, I've admired throughout my life, they manifest these qualities. I share this with you because in so many instances when we listen to people, they talk about situations that are so desperate, so hard, so worrisome, that there's no ray of hope in it. All this underserved, underdone, injustice, I know it's real, but if it's desperate, why are we putting more money into it? If something isn't working, what's going to cause me? So you've got to give that something's working, the glimmer of hope. Something we're striving toward, and of course this animates the human spirit over time. And people who become fervent about a cause do sometimes inadvertently the opposite. They don't project calm, they project this short-term concern or worry. We have any number of leaders across the world who have not secured very large gifts or investments because they keep presenting themselves as frazzled, urgent, this year. And what many donors, keep in mind, on a regular basis, I interview donors. So I continue to learn from them confidentially about particular institutions. How are they doing? And they say, I don't think they can handle a significant investment. I don't think they've got the ability to convert a significant investment into something lasting, something that we would all be proud of. They're too obsessed with the short term. You don't hear them being able to project going forward. So I stress these things before people start securing resources are these attitudes, these outlooks, these behaviors that will draw people to you versus make people feel, okay, they seem like a good person, seems like good work, but, right? So this notion of trying to be what's missing, you're trying to be what's missing in this city, in this part of the world. Your organization's trying to be what's missing. But what's missing for them that you can connect? Be what's missing in the city and be what's missing for people looking for a more meaningful life. You see, that conversation has to occur on a deeper level. I have had many situations where they've said donors are impossible, they won't give, they won't respond, and it's only until you find the common connection. I was once given a dossier on a wealthy family, 3 or 4 generations, and they said, can you do give us a strategy for the whole family? No, I can't give you a strategy. It's composed of individuals. But I looked for one individual that would correspond to their mission. And I found someone and found something in her background and saw a philanthropic act she had made elsewhere that I thought was so profound and so revealing. I went back to my client and I said, "Are you doing anything for at-risk teenagers?" So yeah, we've got 2 faculty members studying at-risk, and we've got a model school, an experimental school on campus. We're actually working with at-risk teenagers, and I became thrilled. I didn't know why. I said, "We've got a match. We've got a potential match." "What do you mean?" "I think we finally found what she will respond to." They had tried everything under the sun. They said, "Good, what do we do?" I said, "Let's write her a letter." They said, "Oh, you're the great philanthropic expert, and you got us writing a letter." "Oh, yeah, great. How much do we pay this guy?" I said, "Let's give it a try." We write her a letter saying, "We're doing this work with at-risk teenagers. Would you like to come to a tour of the school and meet the faculty?" She's rebuffed everything for years. Boom, got the match. And then she comes and she spends 2.5 hours with this very prominent, very philanthropic person. But after 2 hours, she asks him to sit down for coffee. And the first words out of her mouth were, "I'm going to tell you what happened to me when I was 16. She was at death's door. She was at such risk. Her life was imperiled. A group of people saved her, and she gave this huge gift." That's what I picked up on. I was like, "Oh, that's a huge gift looking back. There's something different." And the minute they made that connection, she started giving, right? This is what we're seeing more and more, is this interpersonal connection proving to be. That's an example of what's missing, but see, so many people, they had done all the generic fundraising with her. They had tried to get to her the events. They had tried to put her on the boards. Nope. You got to listen close enough to find what that is. By the way, that's true in practical matters as too. If you're in entrepreneurship, if you're in business development, if you don't think there's an underlying personal component to what motivates people, and anytime you're dealing with successful people, extraordinarily successful people, ask yourself this question over and over again. Why did they work so hard? Why did they sacrifice so much? Why did they burn the midnight oil more than anybody else? Because they did. What drove them? If we find out what drove them, we get to that better place, all right? So what is my advice to you as you think about your mission going forward is to first commit yourself to long-term. That the most important objective is not to secure resources, but to commit yourself, your team, your collective organization to building a stronger community of shared purpose over time. That if you don't embark on that, you will move in fits and starts, that people will come and go. And when you commit yourself to building a stronger community of shared purpose, you commit yourself to listening to each other, checking in more often, valuing people for what they are, not just what they gave, and we start to work together. In the United States, the average nonprofit organization or NGO is losing 4 out of 5 first-time donors. We have found more clever ways to bring donors in and created a sieve once we get them in. You see, we get them to give, but we don't give them a reason to believe, belong better. We make no human connection, and we lose them. So I leave it to you. Do you want to keep chasing people to cobble together budgets each year, or do you want to more assiduously build this community? And if you are a leader of that organization or the person developing the resources for them, what other skills do you need to manifest to make this happen? With a lot of fundraising pressure on you, which I had most of my career, I had to learn to make sure it didn't get in the way of my listening. That for whatever pressure I was feeling didn't allow me to move past someone so quickly that I missed an opportunity to connect. When we study about what persists in philanthropy, what creates a culture of philanthropy, a lasting culture of philanthropy, there's no more powerful element than the individual who has been loyal to you for 20 years or more. So you're pioneers, but think about where you want to be, and what seeds you want to plant is, let's build these relationships as our primary objective. I call it growing the orchard, and the fruit will come. Flip it around and look for the low-hanging fruit. You're always raiding somebody else's orchard. You're not growing your own. Make sense? That's what we must do. And so many organizations fail to do this and get this, oh, we got to meet this year's budget. All right. Still scrambling. All right. I did a post on this the other day that was very well received, by the way. I write regularly on LinkedIn. I had over 5 million views last year, global views. So I'm saying something and sharing information that people are resonating with and saying, yes, we're seeing the same thing. And I shared this post the other day and it did very well. The most important, least understood fundraising truth, not by gathering more donors, but by deepening the relationship with the donors that you already have. That as we deepen our relationship with you, we become more committed and we give more of our time, talent, and treasure. Too little of this. Colleges and universities, everybody thinks the United States is in the clover philanthropically. But colleges and universities, including the most prominent ones, have seen a decline in alumni giving for 37 straight years. And when we surveyed those graduates and said why, they said the only time they reach out to me is when they want money. So what a relationship is that? They say alma mater is not real. Alma mater means nourishing mother. You listen to Margie Ensign, and she intuitively gets, she is a strong leader, but she intuitively gets, you have to be and live alma mater. The way she nourishes her students, the way she listens to them, and she, like me, intuitively says to them, I'm so proud of you. And it means the world to them. It means the world to them. So I know I'm a deep person, I know I'm giving you deep information. But when you lead a nonprofit, there is a parental responsibility. And I don't mean in a diminishing way, but you're raising a family. And that takes parental skills. That takes giving love, not just needing love, right? So sometimes when people ask me, why aren't things working? It's not technique, it's not strategy, it's human disconnection. It's a failure of things that we know to be true. In the midterm, what can you do? We are fortunate to have social media today. I just shared with you, just by sharing my thoughts, I have found millions of people around the globe who share my thoughts, who want to work together toward common ends. But what is the mistake that most people do with social media? Is to not make it very interactive. Just look at us, Ma. Look, we do good things. Oh, here's an event. Everybody had a good time at the event. We're all holding drinks. And my favorite, here's a cardboard check. Oh, that's where I want to be a part of. What else? See where I'm going? Where's that deeper stuff? You know what people want to see on your social media? Altruism in action. They want to see your service providers. They want to see and the people you're benefiting. This research that I cited earlier from Jen Shang and Adrienne Sargent said that they want to see the service providers and they want to interact with the beneficiaries. In the case of higher education, faculty particularly are important, and they want to see the impact on students. They want to interact with students. Our group of entrepreneurs last night, if you ask them what would be most joyous for them, they'll serve the institution in lots of ways because they believe it, and in Margie, but they love interacting with students. The beneficiaries, right? So this is what we must do to make sure that we move closer to short-term, sustained short-term results. When you can legitimately go to someone and say, you can provide something that we can't afford. You can provide an essential skill that we can't afford. You can advance our mission if you lend that talent. This is powerful, and in my experience and research, it's particularly powerful with males. Recruit their talent first and let them talk themselves in to being more supportive. Because when I lend my talent to your organization, I become a co-owner of it. Again, Margie did this in a revolutionary exercise at another college where she talked about co-creation. And she talked about the co-creation of strategic concepts. The people who lent their talent to them were the people most likely to support them. Make sense? Bring people's talent in. Always don't just chase prominent wealth, even difficult wealth, but make sure you surround yourself with the most respected people in the community that you represent. Just good people. People you can point to as being who we are. Always look for the most highly regarded, not the most affluent. The most highly regarded will lead you to a better place. And then in the short term, if you do need to ask for money, Try to do as much listening before you ask. Try not to say, this is what you should do for us, but as I suggested, if you care about young business people, did you know we're doing this? If you care about people with legal issues that can't afford it, that may be subject to injustice, did you know we do this? You want to find first what their life has taught them to be important, and then you secure it, right? And then as you look at Bulgaria and you say, where is wealth being formed? It's amazing what's happening here. I don't know if you even realize that on a per capita basis, the number of entrepreneurs, the number of successful companies you're producing fairly early in this history is astonishing. It's astonishing. Many of them are connected, luckily, with AUBG, right? But remember, when you align with an entrepreneur, you're not talking about somebody who inherited wealth. You're not talking about somebody of long tradition. You're talking about somebody who challenged the norms, challenged traditions. Please remember this. The way we make our money shapes the way we give our money. How does an entrepreneur make his or her money? They see something that's missing. They see what isn't being done. They develop a business plan. They get people to invest in that business plan. So when you're working with an entrepreneur, what are they going to be looking for? What do you see that's missing? Bring me the business plan. Can't bring them a proposal. You can't bring adjectives. You can't bring superlatives. You've got to bring the business plan. Here's what $500,000, $100,000. You see, you bring them in, you give them confidence, you let them go through a due diligence process. So this becomes all important. The way you will secure resources in the next 20 years will be so different because how wealth is being created. And what you will learn is if you don't speak their language, it's true in all walks of life, don't speak their language, you don't build bridges. Learn the language of entrepreneurialism. Learn the expectations of entrepreneurialism. When you approach them, just don't be, we're doing impressive work, we're doing important work. Here's what's missing. Here's where we are. Here's what could be. We're seeing something getting traction, and with a larger investment, we can drive forward. I see so many people miss the chance to successfully interact with entrepreneurs. I mentioned this tectonic shift in philanthropy. Again, this is a study that I did not do, but corresponds with the work I have done. And this is painful for some people to learn, is that less and less people are giving directly to an organization. You're doing good work, here's my contribution. And more saying, I want to give through it. See the difference? And I'm not just going to give what you asked for. This entrepreneur is going to say, drives us crazy sometimes, what other sources of revenue do you have? Are you totally dependent on me? You've got to understand how prominent this will be. And say, well, can you help us? What other sources could we? What other ways could we? But you see what they're trying to do is they're actually trying to make more sustainable enterprises. And they're bringing their experience to say, if you don't have a mix of revenue, if you aren't getting other people, you become dependent on the few. And when they get older and die, then you are in a... So they're actually very constructive in trying to create sustainable models for you. We have had a tendency to say, we need this to keep going. Of course you know we're doing good work. And of course you know any money you give us will allow us to continue to do good work. This group of donors, this new reality, maximize objectives. How? Where? What would a certain level of investment do? Open-ended support to something that is a more complex mix. They want to know you've built the coalition. They want to know that you're participating. What you're doing here, can we all take pictures and share with all our donors? We're working together. We're caring for each other. We're learning from each other. Be very impressive, right? Self-sustaining organizations. So just as we're worried about democracy being sustained, many donors are saying the traditional NGO model is just too wobbly. And therefore, I'm going to be very cautious about investment. When you show me more solidity, more of a root system, I'll invest more. So these powerful philanthropic trends across the globe, which my LinkedIn posting has helped validate, People just don't want to subsidize your operation. They want to optimize the healthiest portion. What's working? What's working? Where are you? Right? They don't want to just give to you. Take the money and do the good with it. I know you'd like more flexible funding. We've got to show them how to give through. There's a very prominent person in the United States who created a foundation, if you can believe it, started a foundation with $50 billion. I interviewed the head of his foundation on behalf of a client. I said, how's my client doing? They said, not good. I said, what's the problem? You don't bring Steve Schwartzman, the gentleman who drew it, you don't bring him a proposal, you bring him a problem. I share that with you because it's not just Steve Schwartzman. Don't bring me a proposal, bring me a problem. Bring me the thing to be fixed. Let's talk about working on it together. You see, that entrepreneur isn't going to sit on the sideline. And when you do bring them in, we see magnificent things happening, some of the largest gifts we've ever seen. So we try to get conceptual alignment, we try to listen to their voice, we try to give them choice within our strategic objectives. We don't let wealthy people dominate, push us around, get us to do something we know is not sustainable. We can flip the tables. But these are the powerful expectations of people making the most significant commitments. Made these points, and I want to open the floor to questions and comments, even debate if you'd like. Right? The other thing is simplicity. Simplicity. It is a post-advertising age, again, a global phenomenon, is that I don't want slick material. I don't want something that looks like it's produced by an ad agency. I want straight talk, either like a letter to a friend or journalistic. I don't want you to use adjectives, I want you to use facts. And the more glitzy you get, the more like you're trying to use advertising to convince me to give rather than fact and conversation. Very powerful. I've seen this in my interviews with donors. Very powerful. So, high concept, low gloss. In other words, the most effective fundraising tool we're seeing is a simple document, 2 to 4 pages, marked draft. Draft. Here's what we're thinking. What do you think? 2 to 4 pages. It's not a sales pitch, it's a conversation starter. See? And it goes back to the earliest days of philanthropy when we worked together toward common cause. Nobody was convincing you. We saw the need together. So we are becoming, and particularly the younger people here, this is a generation that wants more authenticity than my generation. No. Tell us the truth. Be straight. Stop all this pretending, right? So these are incredibly important skills for us to manifest. I wanted to share this with you because Lippincott is a very well-known branding and advertising agency. So on behalf of clients, they do research about how to get market advantage. So this is a corporate advising branding firm telling their corporations what's changed. If they're telling corporations this has changed and this is how they need to be, isn't that what we should have been all along? Here's what's worrying me is corporations are picking up on this and nonprofits and NGOs are acting more corporate. See? Like, oh, we need to, no. Look at this. Does that sound like a corporation? Deep empathy? Talk and act like people? These are not my words, but you see how my research corresponds with it? It's not just storytelling, it's storytelling that demonstrates listening. I didn't just come up with a story, but I've listened to a lot of people, right? Look at this. That's the advice to corporations. Well, they spent millions of dollars of research on it. Let's behoove.
I just want to share, if I can, it makes me think of during, it was Winter Olympics, maybe 10 years ago, the Procter & Gamble ran this extremely powerful ad campaign that has stuck with me ever since, and I get chills thinking about it. I spoke of it one time in a presentation I gave. And it was basically a thank you moms campaign that showed a young, I want to say, ice hockey player from a young age falling down, the mom stepping in, picking them up, losing a tough game, coming off, crying off the ice hockey rink, and the mom giving them a hug, picking this child up every step of the way, And then ultimately, when it reached the Olympics, standing there on the sidelines cheering. And it was such a unbelievably human, authentic.
There you go. It was research. Yeah. You know, they didn't. They research these things, so they're picking up. Beautiful. Just the last slide, and we'll open up for conversation, debate, whatever. So, what makes someone effective at fundraising? Multiple studies. Multiple studies. What makes them emotional intelligence? Curiosity. Curiosity is a huge. You just zero in on people and listen, they're going to tell you a lot. They're going to guide you to where they are comfortable philanthropically. Linguistic adaptability, what does that mean? I'm talking to a businessman or woman, they keep using the word strategy. I'm going to start talking strategy. If I'm talking to somebody who is using very sort of soft humanistic terms, I'm going to try to meet them there. I'm not going to change myself or my message. I'm going to tailor it so that they understand it. Very skilled communicators and fundraisers understand. You listen to their language and meet them there. And then we have to understand human decision making. It evolves over time. It goes from a general, I heard something, that sounds good, to a specific commitment. But all the research that we see, it's 7 to 9 steps, evolving over months and sometimes more than a couple of years. So if you're moving quickly, you're harvesting fruit from the orchard before the tree has grown. See what I mean? Sometimes you may have to. But if you want to get good at fundraising, you practice what we call the art of patient persistence. You give people information and you ask them permission. You preview why you're coming. We'd like to come and listen to you and see if we have an alignment of interest. You meet with them and then you say, could we come back and see if we can show you where we could collaborate? See where I'm going? You create this trusting environment by previewing why you're coming and then asking permission. And what I used throughout my career to great effect is I never asked for money until I said, are we at a point where I may put some numbers in front of you? And they told me yes or no or when, and very often what they would be willing to consider. No awkwardness, no jamming people, no. So thank you so much. I'm trying to distill a lot into a very short period of time. If I haven't been helpful, tell me what I can do and share with you now that would be helpful. Or if you disagree or you have learned something else, let's learn from each other. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Vanya Zlatova. I'm from Best Foundation. We're doing speech and debate tournaments. First of all, thank you for this amazing presentation. It's super helpful for me. I'm in the NGO sector only for 2 years now. I've been in the sales before. And I'm wondering, what do you think about cold contacting in the philanthropy sector? Because the most difficult thing for me at this point is to reach the people which I found amazing, significant, important. I know who they are, but I don't have the connections.
I see.
So what do you have any advices, which is the best way to reach those people?
So how could you be introduced? And if you can't find a third party who knows them, who could introduce you, you just can't do that, I would prefer anything that previews, an email, a letter. Here's who we are, here's what we're trying to do, and let them know, what people hate is being ambushed. I'd like to come talk to you and then you ask them for money. Don't like ambush, right? I'd like to be very specific. Review our plans, see if we're on the right track, see if you can give us advice about who would care about this. I would also say, if you're not doing it already, speech and debate toward what end? Preservation of democracy? Flowering of democracy? Sometimes we'll use catchphrases so we know what activity you're in, but people will be drawn to why are you doing that? What difference are you trying to make? So very often mission statements don't even do that. It's like, we're going to do these things. Well, to what end? Why? And how will we be better for it? So, believe it or not, anything that previews lets them say, no hidden agenda, and you very often have to say, I'd like 20 minutes, and I just want to listen. We've helped a number of clients who get appointments just by saying that. Write them, specify, and give them a time frame. If you're really busy people, one of my most successful meetings with a very significant philanthropist was 10 minutes at about 7 in the morning. That's why I said, I'll be there when you're there in the morning. Best 10-minute meeting I ever had. right?
So you need to request a specific time. The best way is to make a personal meeting with those
yes,
people.
write it,
Yeah,
either
okay.
email or letter, and then be very clear about how much time you want and what you want to use that time with.
Great, thanks.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was really inspiring and it resonates with a lot of my thinking
Good.
lately. So really powerful. I'm Nelly, teach from Bulgaria. I have 4 questions.
Please. High achiever.
Maybe my first question is how you approach community building among a group of donors that is different age, different background, different geographic locations maybe, and how do you approach them to make them part of a community? Do you organize events that make them know each other,
Yes.
or you just connect them to your mission and your cause?
We have too many events and too few conversations.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is bring people to a conversation and define an issue. Could you come? This is the issue we'd like to assess, and all we want is your candid opinion. We're in a listening and learning phase, right? Just do that. And out of that, see if you can find that thread that starts to emerge about what we have in common of that group. Those can be done virtually as well. So it's often the framing of a very provocative question that causes people to go, well, I want to be, right? And then, as I say, an NGO leader has to be a weaver of taking these threads and start putting them into the tapestry that we start to see a picture of. You won't always get clarity from every person, but you're going to be the one that says, oh, I think I can put these, I see where I'm going? I feel a picture is forming. This, to me, is the great leadership skill, is to get what seems to be disparate interests by saying, oh, no, this is what we have in common. This is a great leadership skill.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question. Taking you back to the story of the Saudi Arabian ambassador, you mentioned that you didn't have any plan for the meeting, but I'm sure that you do some preparation.
Oh, yeah.
So my question here is, what is your typical process of preparation, learning more about the donor and the philanthropic activities, interests?
That's a great question. I've done a lot of work in this. And different people have different degrees of comfort and different degrees of trust, and they come from different backgrounds and they have different interests, so I always go in with questions. But the outcome of my question is, what's their animating passion in life? Not just what do they do, and can I get at anything that they hope for? Because if I can tap into hope, if I can find a way that they want for themselves, I don't care if they say, I'd like to, can I connect to that? So, you will find people will talk to you endlessly as long as you remain curious of them, right? And the more they talk to you, the more they feel honored. You can work across time, space, and culture. If you want to show respect to people, the most important thing to do is ask a question and listen. We organized thousands of field interviews with students, 7,000 field interviews at one place. Over 3.5 years. The theme coming back from all the love notes that we got was, I never felt more respected. And we said, just listen, and we gave them questions to listen to what we called their animating passion. Sometimes with men, you got to figure out what drove them, and what's still driving them, and they can't let go of what's driving them. But you see, you ask questions like, well, what was the turning point in your career? When did you know you were going to be successful? What would you like to share with your children and grandchildren, or if you were in a group of young people, what would you want them to know? Transfer of knowledge, transfer of talent. So that's where we dig in, right? And I don't know if I have no trouble getting you'd be surprised who I've interviewed. I mean, most famous people in the world. I have had no trouble getting anybody to tell me their story. Nobody. We are all stories, we are walking stories, hoping somebody will allow us to tell them. And you ask somebody a simple question, and you get a really big kind of biographical insight. Then I go, okay, here's a great opportunity here. Right? We are walking stories. Next question.
Okay, maybe you already answered the next question. It was about, from your experience, when you meet somebody and you don't actually know them, what are the typical, questions that bring the barriers down and really open the person in front of you?
You want to find out, again, there's a story, and there's a story of I did this despite, I did this, right? So many people walk around with a story of I accomplished something that somebody didn't think was possible. So that's where I try to, what are they proud of? So you often start with the obvious success. Now, with the benefit of social media, by the way, I did deeply prepare, you're right. But what I would prepare is biographical information. The most valuable information to this day to me is anything I can get that somebody actually said. If I can find somebody on social media who's on a soapbox, you have that expression, they've got very strong opinions. By the way, I'm one of them, right? If I can get into words that people actually wrote. So, Margie will appreciate this. Rockefeller Brothers Foundation. I'm going to go meet the head of it. I'm doing my research. I find him doing an article in which he says we must practice, acupuncture philanthropy. It must be so precise. It's like the width of a pore. Guess where I start? He had to be proud of that phrase. So I get the guy who's, what? What is that like? Oh, he talked for, I had another one of those where I had, 40-minute appointment. He was talking for hours. You got the appointment's over, right? So I look for what are you advertising you care about? If I can get on social media. And again, you see, I hope you see, I'm not trying to manipulate it. I'm trying to say, you're advertising something and you're frustrated that people aren't responding to it. Gentleman we talked to last night, very prominent, on the way out, and you could tell he is a tremendously successful, brilliant man. But on the way out, because I learned a lot. I said to him, I learned a lot. He goes, Bulgarians won't listen to me. They don't ask me the right questions. They don't ask me how. You see? Such an opportunity. Yeah. Such an opportunity. And maybe because people are off-put by it, you go, how did you do that? How did you build a company out of nowhere? What was the turning point? It's that genuine interest. But the great thing to me about an advancement career is I feel like I got beyond a PhD in human nature and the seeds of success. I was selfish. I said, I'm going to go learn for my own self. And I'm going to help the organization I'm representing. Think about that. Learn for yourself. Next question. You're great.
So the last one.
You're great. No, that's why we're here.
So maybe my last question is, we spent all that time preparing for a meeting and focusing on the meeting, but my question is about the art of following up and keeping the engagement and the conversation going. So how do you approach, the follow-up? Are there some rules?
Thank you. So even in the United States, again, you look at it from the outside and all these things are going, but when we study fundraising organizations, most fundraisers can't get appointments with most of the people in their portfolios. Can't. And those that get one meeting struggle to get two. And we throw so much effort at this nonsense of making this happen. So you try to get the meeting for a precise purpose, to be clear, and then the best way is to, a couple of days later, is to follow up with a note saying what? I heard you and wonder if this would make the next best step. I think, is this what? And could we? You see, it's going back to, did we connect on this? I have people, again, they'll produce these things. Oh, we have leave behinds, brochures. So we go visit and then we leave this, you just closed the door behind by leaving a brochure. I never used a brochure. I would always, and then I'd write a note saying, I've been giving a lot of thought, and I think we might, see where I'm going? I heard you, and I see a possibility of working together. I was also enough of, intuitive person to be truly affirming, so I never wanted to mislead somebody. So I looked for something I could admire about them in their writing or something when I met, that I could, when people saw me when I was in my 30s and looked very young, said, you are so fatherly with older donors. these men working so hard, so selfish. I just go, wow. That is so impressive. That is amazing. Or you represent an institution that they want recognition from. Just me going in. When I was 37 years of age, I was a vice president at a major institution in the United States, and all the men that had graduated from it were in the military. When I walked in at 37, older men would stand up in the room. Then I realized, it's not you, Jim, it's the position. Then I realized, oh, how important it was. Exactly what Margie does is, thank you for what you've done, we're impressed with you. I understood I had a parental affirming role, but I had to find a genuine way to do it. With some people, it was really hard to find something I admired, but, but I worked at it. By the way, just to show you how, I had one man who agreed to an appointment, and then I met him in New York City and started the conversation by reminding him I had previewed. And he opened it with, I don't give, and a string of curse words about that organization, and I don't give a string of curse words about that initiative. Everything had been previewed, everything had been set up. And he's using, I was in the Army, my sergeant didn't use language like that, right? So a younger practitioner would be shocked. You go, oh, some intervening event behind the, so I go, well, I'm just looking for candor. I said, what do you care about? He's not prepared for that. He's prepared for, so what do you care about? He glowers at me. He goes, prostate cancer. I said, what stage? He's a pussycat in 5 minutes. That's experience, that's wisdom, that's, don't be, look below the surface, find the human body. Make sense? Yeah. So that's it, is you go prepared, but you are adaptive throughout. You read from a script, you want to make a presentation or a pitch. So what so many donors told me after, again, Margie is the inverse, I worked with marvelous presidents. What so many donors told me after meetings with presidents is they never got to know me. I thought my experience might matter to the university. They didn't. They didn't seem interested in that. Right? I had another president, wonderful man, who when I would go with him and talk about, when it was a stage and appropriate to talk about, might you consider an investment, he went into a fetal position. He was so uncomfortable with money, and he didn't realize he was doing it. So on the way back, he was wonderful, non-egotistical, said, well, how did I do? I said, well, you know, you're so likable, but you realize you're curling up when I start to use, no. So I said, just do me one favor, is anytime I use numbers, straighten your shoulders. And he got kind of overstated. The next time he goes like, snaps them up there. Body language. So much of what I don't like about nonprofit or NGO fundraising is that unintentionally it's go, can't you help us? Versus, do we ever have a deal for you? We're going to give you the most rewarding time of your life. We're going to be the thing you're going to most remember. I truly believe that's what we do when we do our job well. Those are wonderful questions. You are that natively curious person that will do quite well in this field. You see, it's more of a study of human nature, isn't it, than just disembodied.
Kramena Dervenkova. Hello.
From I met you coming in.
Yeah. So Kramena from ABLE, Association of the Bulgarian Leaders and Entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for the extremely valuable lecture. I wrote so many things down that weren't on the slides. Good. So a follow-up question after Nell's about follow-ups. We have different donors. They donate different amount of money, and some of them would increase their yearly donation year over year, but then some of them would stop donating, and my approach would be a direct one, asking them what's the reason for this, and some of them would answer, others won't answer even after several follow-ups. So do you have any advice on how?
Those are the ones you worry about, right? So something happened, they sat on it for a while, and then they leave, and they don't want to talk about it. So that worries me, because they're, so can you do a survey, you know, through online platform that gives them, say, we're going to do a survey, and we want you to be candid, but it will not attribute to, we won't know your name, right? And see if you see a thread. I think your instincts, though, are so important, is that's where we learn our most valuable lessons, is the people who started giving and stopped and won't tell us. So anything you can do to discover that will be important. And to show that you care enough to you keep pursuing it. So they won't answer you. They might a year later. Or they might if you send out saying, we want to get, see how well we're doing, make sure we are keeping faith with those that support us. So, we're going to use this independent research platform. I use Alchemer, right, with on behalf of lots of clients. And you get some really good insight about, very often it is, not being heard or not being respected or not having my talent put to good use. Or somebody else dominating organizations, and so you never get to speak up because we got these strong personalities. But by the way, if I could just add one thing, going back to entrepreneurs, if you could see what an entrepreneur goes through when he or she submits a business plan to a potential investor, they tear it up. They rip it to shreds. Then we go in with our little idea and they start tearing it up and they go, what's the matter with you? Can't you stand up to this? See? It's the way you stand up to it. That's how they got better. So I just want to make sure we remember that. Don't take that personally. Don't get tender about hard, tough criticism. To me, it's engagement. And you go, all right, bring it on. But that's it, is your instincts are really good. If you're going to build this community, keep trying. You won't get all of them, but we learn far more from failure than we do success, and that kind of failure. Sure. That, to me, is too little of that is being done.
So what do we do with all the others while we are engaging this handful of people?
Wonderful question.
How do we keep them engaged?
Wonderful question. And this is what I struggled with my whole career, right? How do I scale this? I only have so many people. That's what, for instance, why I ask students and train them in interview. Will you just go interview? Alumni, it was a regular point of contact. Surveys are a regular point of contact. Conversational events where you may not have Margie or Susan, but could you have a faculty? Could you have an initiative leader there, one of the featured objectives? You got to invite people into conversations, and some, got to be careful, but as you identify either board members or alums who you come to trust, would you be a discussion leader? Would you host something in your home, and would you be the listener? Many alums love the idea of discussing this with fellow alums. Now, you do want a recorder in the room, so we learn from it. But you see, your instinct is exactly right. What we've got to do is identify and develop a group of discussion leaders if we're going to sustain these conversations and make people feel heard and valued. So we should do some brainstorming about what's that, and Margie has to be comfortable with whoever's representing the university. Margie, protocol dictates Margie is with people of great consequence. But you've got faculty members, you've got other people that could do that quite well. Just make sure they're good listeners. It's a wonderful question. That's it's a thing we need to work on.
Jim, could you touch on the follow-up, the thank you? Because I'm afraid some of us don't do the thank you. And the follow-up, the constant grooming and care of these donors.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. Sometimes we walk by the obvious. Don't ever ask somebody for money if you're not prepared to thank them. Don't even start, because you'll do more harm than good. So I hear people, I'm too busy. I'm sorry, here's where I'm going to be a tough guy. I would write every Christmas 2,000 thank you notes. My hand would cramp. People would say, Jim, we can get an automatic pen. I'd say, if I can't do this, I shouldn't be in the field. Right? That's the one thing we just can't. You cannot not be personally thankful. Machine generated, people say, we're going to use AI to write them. Oh, wonderful. By the way, I had a very brilliant friend who asked ChatGPT, should you use AI? And it said, no, that's a terrible thing to do. Now, that's a good use of AI, right? If you can tell one thing about me is it's try to get us to a more common human level, that this is what organization is about. It's not about structure, it's about our value for each other, our dependence on each other, our interconnectedness, which we've lost. And this is what people are searching for. So the note, Nancy, not just the note, but try to bring something into it. Try to say the personal thing. By the way, I hope you can get it, there's an organization in the States called Donors Choose. And what it does is allow you to give to teachers at various levels. So teachers will say, what someone discovered is that teachers were using their own meager salaries to buy school supplies to improve their children. They had next to nothing, and so some entrepreneur heard about this and goes, this is crazy. So I give, and I fall in love with these teachers, not only because they advertise, here's what I'd like to do this for my students. Some of it is really kind of tender and sweet, like this teacher cared enough. So students with issues socializing can get overwhelmed learning. They're just having trouble acclimating. Somebody discovered they put these little colorful canoes in the classroom. These are young children. And if you just feel uncomfortable, you go climb in a canoe for a few minutes. And then they pop back out when they're ready. She said, so she advertised, would you help us buy these little canoes? Like, I got to try this. I could have probably used it. I probably still could use a little canoe. We could all use a little canoe. Then the teacher writes, Jim, they access the canoes this up, and this is what we saw with it. Makes you want to give it again and again. You hear it directly from the teacher. See what, remember I said people want to hear from the service delivery? She took me into the classroom and said, that thing you helped us with, here's what I'm saying. If you can do that, bring them to the mission delivery point. This is what you mean. Send them pictures. But Nancy, thank you. That's the solidification of this burgeoning compact. That's the first step. And it doesn't have to be this gushy, gushy, gushy. It's, look what you did. Look what's happening. See, it doesn't, you're the most wonderful person in the world. No, 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 no. This is what's happening because of your support. Excellent. Sir.
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Simon, and I run Glass Foundation. It's devoted to LGBTI equal rights and equality in Bulgaria, and also Sofia Pride, the only Pride parade in a country of almost 7 million people. It's a comment and a question. I've so much thought about us and the donors as being us against them. And your talk today actually opened my eyes that it's us with them.
Yes,
it's us
sir.
with them changing what we. So thank you very much for this. And the question is, now when it comes to the LGBTI topic, a lot of donors in Bulgaria consider it somehow a toxic one, that is going to give them bad image. So they close their doors even before sending an email, even before asking them. So my question would be, and you know that when you're doing something that is so equal to, that is so close to what you're doing, you get frustrated by that. But then how should we approach philanthropy when our cause is considered toxic in a society?
Well, that was a wonderfully easy question. But look what's happened elsewhere. So good for you that you're starting. So it's like that seed in that hard ground. It's going to take time. I can't lie to you. But look elsewhere. That those like you who are willing to stand up and say, but we are essential, we are a part of the human enterprise, we are equal to others, somehow over time made a difference. So the first thing is, what is possible? And then sometimes things happen that help break a stigma. So other people have influence stepping forward and saying, no, I'm going to do this. By the way, this would be true of things like alcoholism. And so we've seen when people with courage step forward and go, no, that others admire and respect, it starts to change that. I wish it were otherwise. I don't think I have the answer for this is how we will turn it. But I think where you started is very important, that you are far from alone. Listen to the language of fundraising. Targets. Acquire a donor. Oh, can I buy you? How much do you? We use the damnedest phrases. Inadvertent, but they're dehumanizing. Love your enemy. They're humans too. They're flawed. They're scarred. Try to demonstrate like Nelson Mandela. The guards fell in love with him. Make your guards fall in love with you by being kind and persistent. What I don't like, forgive me and you can argue with me, is this condemnation of people who think differently. You won't win them over. You put them on the defensive. We don't like it. It's wrong. You don't deserve it. But I want to love their barriers down, not scream their barriers down.